Take down the question. Explain the process of transport of water and minerals. Explain the process of transport of water and minerals by the xylem. Water and minerals by the xylem and food by the phloem. Now generally you get only one part of it, xylem or xylem and phloem both. Most commonly only xylem or only phloem. Write down the answer. And food by the phloem. Okay. Now write down the answer. Explain the process of
xylem and food by the phloem.
Xylem and food by the phloem. So transportation by xylem, transportation by phloem you have to write. Write down the answer. First head you write. Transportation by xylem. That's the first head you have to write. Transportation by xylem. Write your answer in points. Transportation by xylem. That's the first head. Start your answer. Transportation by xylem. Right? Xylem is a tubular arrangement of cells. Xylem is a tubular arrangement of cells connecting the roots, stem, connecting the root, stem, branches, and veins of the leaf. And veins of the leaf. Full stop. Full stop. It is composed of. Same point. I'll tell you when to change the point. It is composed of 4 types of cells. It is composed of 4 types of cells. Tracheids. Spelling क्या है? Tracheids. Point. This is the same point. Don't worry. I will tell you when to change the point. Relation में लिखो answer. So you learning, remembering would be easy. Tracheids का spelling क्या है? Tracheids. Composed of cells known as tracheids, vessels, xylem parenchyma, and xylem fibers. Full stop. Full stop. Next one. The water in the xylem. The water in the xylem is lost by the process of. Water in the xylem is lost by the process of transpiration. Water in the xylem is lost by the process of transpiration, comma. The specialized structures on the leaf known as on the leaf surface known as stomata releases the excess water in the form of vapor. Releases the excess water in the half of the notebook में क्यों नहीं, half of the page में क्यों नहीं लिख रहे हो? नहीं पूरा लिखो ना, points में कैसे notes लिखते हैं? Points में लिखो, पूरा पेज यूज करो.
Excess water
In the form of vapors. In the form of vapor. Full stop. In the form of vapor. The rate of transpiration. The rate of transpiration generates. Rate of transpiration generates a pulling force. Rate of transpiration generates a pulling force in the xylem tubes known as what? Transpirational pull. Generates a pulling force in the xylem tubes known as transpirational pull. Full stop. Next point. Transpirational pull is responsible for transpirational pull is responsible the absorption of water, absorption of soil water to write, absorption of soil water by the root cells by a process. Absorption of soil water by the root cells by a process known as osmosis. By a process known as osmosis. Full stop. Last point. Next point. The xylem cells, especially tracheids and vessels, help in the upward movement, of water and minerals from the roots to the upper parts of the plant, a process known as ascent of sap. Okay, clear hai? Go to the next paragraph. Transportation by phloem. Next paragraph. Transportation by phloem. Transportation by phloem. Answer. Phloem is a tubular arrangement of cells. Phloem is a tubular arrangement of cells close to the bark, on either sides of the xylem, connecting the leaves to all parts of the plant. Connecting the leaves to all parts of the plant. Leaves to all parts of the plant. Full stop. The phloem consists of, next point, phloem consists of sieve tubes. Phloem consists of sieve tubes, companion cells, sieve tubes, companion cells, phloem parenchyma, and phloem fibers. Next point, the food synthesized in the leaf cells, food synthesized in the leaf cells by photosynthesis is in the form of glucose. Is in the form of glucose. Full stop. Glucose gets converted, Glucose gets converted to sucrose. Glucose gets converted to sucrose. Glucose gets converted to sucrose and is dissolved. In the nearby phloem cells. Full stop. Next point. Phloem distributes soluble food. Phloem distributes soluble food in all directions from the leaf. In all directions from the leaf. A process known as translocation takes place. A process known as translocation takes place. Last line. Last line you can add there, okay? No need of writing a separate point for that. Prominent cells involved in this process are the sieve tubes. In this process are the sieve tubes, companion cells, and phloem parenchyma. Sieve tubes, companion cells, and phloem parenchyma. Okay, so these few concepts, the names, the processes, all this should be there in your answer whenever you are writing about the concept of transportation. So we are done with the third segment of the chapter. The last that we are talking about would be excretion. Okay, I'll give you 5 minutes. Go through till this part of the chapter. Is there anything that you want to clarify? There are so many things, unless and until you read thoroughly, you will not understand where you are getting stuck. But still, even the textbook, the notes are already written in the notebook. Textbook agar go through karna hai, if you want to check, find out if there's anything, clarify the textbook. Till the concept on transportation, just clarify from the textbook. Go through, find out if there's anything you want to check, find out, not clear. Anaerobic not understood.
Yes, ma'am. Clear that.
Not understood. Anaerobic respiration is a concept where the cells where oxygen is not there, then what will happen to the glucose? Cells where oxygen is not there, there also the glucose is getting broken down. Then what is the pathway? Glucose is getting broken down to some complex compound because the breakdown is incomplete. So it is getting broken down to some complex compound. What is that complex compound? Ethanol, ethyl alcohol. Ethanol, yes, what is going on there? What is the matter you are discussing right in the classroom? Now, when we are talking about this, I said that when we look into a concept of complete breakdown, then the products will be simpler, like the carbon dioxide. In case of anaerobic respiration, breakdown of glucose is incomplete, hence the products are complex. Ethyl alcohol, water. How many molecules of energy? 280. So this process of incomplete breakdown, why incomplete breakdown? Because oxygen is not there. This method is known as anaerobic respiration. Now the question is, does develop cells like humans through anaerobic respiration ever? Sometimes. Sometimes? When our muscle cells run short of oxygen. When does that happen? When the contraction rate is much more than the rate of breathing. So when we go for running, exercising, or vigorous muscular activity, for a sportsman you can think of, athlete you can think of, or whenever we are also constantly shuffling and running, then deficiency of oxygen may happen. During that time, what are the changes in our muscle cells? Is the muscle cell getting a lot of oxygen at that time? No, there is a deficiency. Oxygen is there, but little amount. Since oxygen is little amount, so ethanol will not be formed. Ethanol कब बनेगा? When absolutely absent. So यहाँ पे क्या हो रहा है? Oxygen is there, but deficiency है. So since deficiency है, then the glucose is getting converted to lactic acid. But the moment the lactic acid starts building up, oxygen deficiency बढ़ता ही जा रहा है. Now this lactic acid starts building up. This causes muscle pain, contraction, slow down हो जाता है. So these are the processes. So now more the lactic acid, the muscle will ache, muscle will show cramps, muscle will get exhausted. Can this be rectified on its own? Yes, when we slow down the muscle contraction, when we take rest. When we are slowing down muscle contraction, rate of breathing can supply that much of oxygen, and the process can again get back to carbon dioxide oxygen at 38 atm. So the formation of alcohol and etc. that can also be considered as fermentation. That is also known as fermentation. Go through all of you. Text, dekho. If there's anything that you want to clarify, I'll give you 5-10 minutes. Because this is a big chapter, so much to read. We are almost winding up with this chapter. Hai kuch? Cross section of the layers of cells. If you see that diagram, what are the layers of cell? The uppermost layer is known as the epidermis, upper epidermis. No, that upper epidermis will always release or produce a waxy layer. What is that waxy layer known as? It is known as the cuticle. So right now you are not talking much about cuticle in your question there. So epidermis के नीचे जो layers of cells है, these are known as the mesophyll cells. Okay, I had asked you to mark those when I taught you that part. So all these layers of cells are known as the mesophyll cells. And then there is again one more layer of epidermis. So on that layer of epidermis are the minute pores. Which are those pores? The stomata. So that section of the cells that you are talking about, the layers of the cells, you have come across it, photosynthesis, no? So that's a part of photosynthesis where you are understanding that on the section of the leaf, which are the cells which show photosynthesis, it is those mesophyll cells. What is that special property of the mesophyll cells? Chloroplast. They can trap solar energy because they have got chlorophyll produced there. So with relation to that, and also one more thing about the chloroplast, the stroma, the dark phase, light phase that we had discussed. The portion that you study always should be topic wise. Huh? You don't go by the pages. Okay, itna mera page ho gaya, itna mera page ho gaya. No. Understand what are the topics. I have always taught you topic wise. Ye topic hai, ye topic hai, ye topic hai, ye topic. So syllabus, as per the syllabus, the topics you have to understand. And of course you are reading the page. You are reading the pages of your book. But in that page of a book, one page of a book may have 3 topics, one page of a book may have 4 topics. But since in your book there is nothing highlighted, so that's why always I have taught you topic wise. So check out what are the topics one by one that you have to read from the volume or from the class notes that you have read, that you have written down. Lymph phase, if you remember when I talk about lymph ke liye, देखो there's a diagram. Which page is it?
160.
162. Look into that page as I explained. Look into the diagram. Look into the diagram as I'm explaining. All of you look into the diagram. I had explained the same thing with that diagram. Now you look into the diagram and understand. Can you see the blood vessels, blood capillaries दिखाई दे रहा है वहाँ पे? Blood capillaries दिखाई दे रहा है? How will you understand the blood capillaries? See there. Blood capillaries, see there. Can you see the lymphatic capillaries shown? Can you see the lymphatic capillaries shown? Just above the lymphatic capillaries, those are the blood capillaries. Those marked in black. Those are the blood capillaries. So when the blood is moving, now see up there the relation is already shown. The heart is there. No? Up there the heart is there. And so when the blood is coming from the heart, meaning I talk about this figure, I'm talking about this figure. This is the heart, no? The blood is coming to these capillaries. These capillaries. The blood is coming from the heart to the capillaries, so definitely the blood is rushing at a high pressure. And what did I tell you the other day is that when the blood is moving in these capillaries, since the capillary wall has got small pores, the liquid part of the blood will ooze out, come out, leak out. What is the liquid part of the blood known as plasma? So from this blood, which is running at a high pressure, what is leaking out? Plasma and WBCs. Plasma तो liquid part of the blood है, इसीलिए definitely it will leak out. WBC, why is it leaking out? I gave you that feature, एक feature, एक function I told you. WBC, how that can come out of the blood capillary? I had asked you a special feature of the WBC we had studied. What is that? It can change its shape. What was that word? इसके आगे देखो. Amoeboid. WBCs are amoeboid, meaning it can change shape. So that's the reason. Lymph समझने के लिए this part you'll have to understand nicely. ये जो part है, this is what you'll have to understand nicely. Now we are again talking about a blood vessel. The relation of a blood vessel, if I understand that this is the blood vessel there, and then the blood vessel has got small pores. The blood is running in the blood vessel at a very high pressure, and surrounding the blood vessel, what are we to understand? Surrounding the blood vessel definitely are some tissues and organs. Blood vessel कहाँ पे present होगा? Definitely on the surface of some organ tissue. So now that the blood is running at a high pressure, now what? Some liquid part of the blood is oozing out, some liquid part of the blood is oozing out, but along with the liquid part of the blood, one type of cell is coming out, not the RBC, which are very small. RBC is getting stuck in those small holes, pores, But the WBC, because the WBC can change its shape and it is coming out. That big WBC can become slender, needle-like also, and it can penetrate through those small pores of the blood vessel. So now that this fluid that we are talking about, this fluid which is running over the cells now, tissues now, just think a single capillary on the surface of the stomach. So from one single capillary, this fluid is coming out, running over the surface of the stomach. So ये जो capillary है, almost parallel to this capillary, what will be there? Some network of lymphatic capillaries will always be there. Some network of lymphatic capillaries will always be there. Whichever part of the body I think of, blood capillaries के parallel हमेशा lymphatic network is always there. So what will happen to this fluid which is running over the cells? पहले तो what is the name of this fluid? This fluid is known as the tissue fluid. So composition of the tissue fluid क्या है? Can you tell me? ये जो fluid निकल के आ रहा है and is flowing over the surface of the stomach, for example, surface of the liver, for example, ये जो fluid है इसका composition क्या है? What did I tell you? What is coming out? Plasma and the WBC. So composition क्या हो गया? Composition is plasma and WBC. So that is the composition. Can this fluid be ever red in color? RBC नहीं है, colorless है. So यही जो fluid है, it is now entering and diffusing into this system of tubes. Which tubes? The lymphatic tubes, जो हमेशा blood vessels के parallel ही placed होता है in our body. Now this fluid which is present in this set of capillaries, the lymphatic capillaries, this is known as lymph. So what is the composition of lymph? Plasma and WBC. What is the color of lymph? Colorless. It is colorless. Why is it colorless? Because RBC नहीं है. The color is only because of the RBC, because of the hemoglobin. So this lymphatic vessel in course of time will always go and join with a vein. Every lymphatic vessel of our body will go and join with a vein. What is this vein carrying? The vein is carrying the deoxygenated blood. The vein is always carrying deoxygenated blood brought from some other organ. So this lymph formed from the blood and goes and joins with the blood again. This is known as a secondary body fluid. Secondary क्यों? क्योंकि this is every time formed from the blood, goes and joins with the blood. And so now if I talk about this vena cava, try understanding these veins will go and join to form the vena cava. Such type of veins, almost 50 of them, 20 of them will join and form the vena cava later. In the lower part of the body, in the upper part of the body. So this lymph, then what is it doing? What are some of the, did you write this answer, 3 functions of the lymph? I think I did. So 3 functions of the lymph, sometimes 1 or 2 functions to write in your exam you are asked. So what should be the function of the lymph? Because lymph is containing plasma. So plasma mein, what was the composition of the plasma at the start I discussed? Plasma contains variety of nutrients. It has got salts, proteins. It has got hormones, all essential substances. So can you write that lymph also helps in the distribution of the nutrients and the hormones? Yes. Because the lymph is also circulating in the body and it also can bring about the distribution of these substances. But the blood does it in a bigger scale. Lymphatic vessels are not that elaborately present. Okay. Second, lymph has got WBCs also. So what can be the other function of the lymph that you write? Defense. Because WBC has the defense role. And one more function is the lymph in the villi. What is its function? Absorption of fat. The lymph in the villi brings about absorption of fat. So that is the concept of lymph. Sometimes you are asked about the difference between blood and lymph. What should you write? 2 differences between the blood and lymph.
Red color and colorless.
Did you write that? I think they have written that also. It is red color, colorless. Composition difference likhna hai.
Disease, plasma.
3 types of cells. Blood mein 3 types of cells. Yahan pe lymph mein only 1 type. And the third difference, what did we write? How does it flow? The blood is always flowing because of the contraction of the heart. But how is the lymph flowing? Because of the movement of the body parts, muscle contraction. Side lymphatic vessels के आसपास जितने भी muscles हैं, the moment we are moving our body more, the lymphatic circulation will be much more. Okay. Okay.
One more thing is when NCERT is written about fishes have only two chambers to their hearts, and blood is pumped to the gills, is oxygenated there and passes directly to the rest of the body. Thus, blood goes only once through the heart in the fish during the cycle of passage through the body. On the other hand, it goes through the heart twice during the cycle in other vertebrate. This is known as solution. What is you can understand
See,
about
in case of fishes, what is happening? The heart is very simple. In case of fishes, the heart is very simple, meaning it has got just one upper chamber, one lower chamber. So if I have to talk about the heart of the fishes generally has got some openings, and the structure of the heart is almost like this. One auricle, one ventricle, one atrium, one ventricle. So now the blood will come. Which type of blood? The deoxygenated blood. The deoxygenated blood enters the auricle, goes to the ventricle, and then it will go where? It will go to the gills. What is the gills function here? The deoxygenated blood goes to the gills because gills are the primary respiratory organ for the fishes. So this blood which is going near the gills, which has got more of carbon dioxide, but as the blood passes through the gills, what will happen? The blood will gather more of oxygen. Q? Because surrounding the gills, the concentration of oxygen is more because the water is constantly rushing by the gills and the gills are absorbing the dissolved oxygen from the water. So when the blood moves from the ventricle goes to the gills, the deoxygenated blood is becoming oxygenated. But unlike our body where the blood from the lungs again comes back to the left side of our heart, no? In our case, what is happening? The blood from the lungs is again coming to the left side of the heart. But just think, if our heart would have been just half of it, then there is no chance that the blood comes back again second time. Same thing is happening for the heart of the fishes. The blood is moving through the heart only once. From the body going to the auricle, ventricle, from the ventricle going to the gills and the rest of the body parts. So from the gills it will go to the rest of the body parts. From the rest of the body parts again the heart. Is it not the blood traveling through the heart only once? The blood is traveling through the heart only once because it does not have another set of chambers. कि ऑक्सीजनेटेड होने के बाद ब्लड फिर से वापस बॉडी में हार्ट में आए, ये ऑप्शन नहीं है. Only the deoxygenated blood is entering, coming, going to the gills. यहाँ पे purification हो रहा है. Purification कैसे हो रहा है? How is the gills concentrated with the oxygen? क्योंकि the water is also moving through the gills. The water for the fish is entering through the mouth, going out through the gills, and during that process, the blood is picking up the oxygen. And these blood vessels which are running by the gills, they pick up the oxygen from that blood. So this oxygenated blood is not coming back to the heart again like us, straight away to the body, and then the oxygenated again entering the heart. So in the fishes, what is happening is, the blood is not traveling through the heart twice, the blood is just traveling through the heart once.
So the heart does not do the purification.
In our case also, heart is not doing any purification. In our case also, where is the heart doing the purification? Lungs. In our case also, the purification is done by the lungs. In their case, the purification is done by the gills. Only that in our case, since the body is more complex, the heart is pumping with such a great force that the blood right from the heart reaches every part of the body in a couple of seconds. The left ventricle is contracting with such a great force that in just 1 or 2 seconds, the blood reaches even the tips of our toes. But is that happening for the fish? No, that is not happening for the fish. The contraction of the heart is not that strong for the fishes. Clear, eh? I think we have done also that question, no? We have done? I think we have written also that question. Blood flows to the... Blood mixing is happening near the respiratory surface, mixing is happening, no? Diffusion is happening, but the process of diffusion is not very accurate like us. It's not that efficient like us. It's not very efficient like us, no. Gaseous exchange हो तो रहा है, but it is not a very efficient process that is happening. But how are they able to manage? Because like oxygen supply अगर कम भी है, energy release कम भी है, they are able to manage because their oxygen energy demand is much lesser than us. हमारे बॉडी में उस तरह का प्रोसेस चल ही नहीं सकता था because our energy demand is so much. Now that I am talking, now that you are writing, every minute, every second, the cells are needing so much of energy. So we are very complex organisms. Done? Should we start with the next part of the chapter? See there, page 163 also, you'll have to read this part, page 163 about the concept of transportation of water, transportation of food, it is mentioned there also. So you can elaborate your answer. I have given you all the steps, all the processes, the major processes steps definitely to mention in your answer. Apart from that, some few more elaboration if you want, you'll have to read that. Once you are understanding, you can increase the content of your answers. I think questions here, we are almost done. There's nothing much left. Okay, there are quite a lot of questions. I want you to go through those parts of the question there. In the volume, if you go through, there are review questions. There are many such questions. Off and on, I'll ask you to write in the form of a test in the classroom. But follow, if you're not reading the parts of the chapter, then answering those questions would be difficult. Do you have any test tomorrow, Sunday? What is the portion there?
Light and
Not biology, no? Not biology. Okay, now as we start with the next part of the chapter, what is the next part of the chapter we are going to study? Definition. What is the definition? What would be the release of? What should be the definition of excretion?
release of toxic waste from our body. Nitrogenous waste from our body.
Release of toxic nitrogenous waste. Now that we are talking about the release of toxic nitrogenous waste, the release of toxic nitrogenous waste should be by the process of filtration of the blood. So when we are talking about excretion, what are some of the terms that you should write in your definition? What is defined excretion? The release of toxic nitrogenous waste. So I am talking about the nitrogenous waste. What are some nitrogenous wastes in our body? The nitrogenous wastes in our body which are very harmful, very poisonous are the urea, the uric acid. We are terrestrial organisms, and for us most toxic is the urea and the uric acid. But how are these formed? The urea and the uric acid, they are formed in the liver. They are not formed in the kidney. We are going to talk about the process of excretion, which will always deal with all the poisonous substances which are present in the blood, throw them away from the body. But then, throw what type of substances majorly? What type of substances should be thrown out as fast as possible from our body? Otherwise, They make the blood poisonous. This is what we are talking about, nitrogenous waste. Why the word nitrogenous waste? Because these type of substances are formed by the breakdown of the amino acids. Now you know what are amino acids. What are amino acids?
Simple form of proteins.
Simplest form of proteins. So now that I talk about that breakdown nitrogenous waste, to understand why are we using this word nitrogenous waste? We are using this word nitrogenous waste because they are majorly made up of carbon, hydrogen, oxygen and nitrogen. Nitrogen is a major component there. So nitrogenous waste. And where are they formed? These nitrogenous wastes are always formed. Remember, always they are not formed in any excretory organ, but they are formed in the liver. They are formed in the liver. Now, these nitrogenous waste or the breakdown of amino acids that I am talking about, where is this breakdown of the amino acid taking place? Again, the site where the urea, uric acid are formed, always in the liver. Which are the primary organs now? Now that we understand the process of excretion should release of this type of substances by the process of filtration of the blood, which organs of the body are playing a vital role? First to think of is what? The organs of the body. The first organ to think of definitely are the kidneys. We are talking about the kidneys. Where are the kidneys located? What are their major job? What are their major functions? We try understanding. The kidneys location, always to remember, the kidneys are located where? The kidneys are located just above the hips. Either side of the vertebral column, they are always present on the either side of the vertebral column. They are present on either side of the backbone, they are present on either side of the vertebral column, and they are present as a pair of small reddish bead-shaped structures. What are their most important function? What is their job? What are they doing? Purifying the blood, filtration of the blood. Filtration of the blood. So when we are talking about filtration of the blood, filtering the blood of what? Of nitrogenous substances. So now, as I talk about the kidneys, what are some of the prominent functions now we start writing? What are the two most important functions of the kidneys? Primary, vital, excretory organ of our body we are talking about. What are the primary functions now? Two major functions of the kidneys too, right? The first is filtration of the blood. The first is filtration of the blood. And now that we are understanding that yes, the kidneys bring about the filtration of the blood, during this process, one more process as it is happens in the body, and that is a process known as osmoregulation. And what is osmoregulation? Osmoregulation means the maintenance of the salt and the water balance. Maintenance of the salt and the water balance where? In the blood. Maintenance of salt and water balance in the blood. So we are going to understand these processes in the specialized structures. So I start step by step, very slow, try understanding the words and the meanings and the site. So first of all, I'm saying, what does the word excretion deal with? Excretion always means throwing out of the nitrogenous waste majorly from the body. Why the word nitrogenous? Again, I repeat, because they majorly contain nitrogen in them, because they are formed by the breakdown of the amino acids. Which is the site of the body where the process is happening? The site of the body is the kidney and the liver. And kidney is the organ which will throw them out from the body. So this is the vital excretory organ. Kidneys are the vital excretory organ. But apart from the kidney, is there any other organ of our body which is also playing some role so far? Excretion, the concept of excretion is concerned. Yes, there are quite a number of them, and these are known as what? Extra or accessory, additional excretory organs. Then which are those additional excretory organs? Kidney is the vital I just now mentioned, but apart from the kidney, which are some of the additional organs? some of the other parts of the body, some of the other additional organs of the body which play an important role in releasing out unwanted substances from the body. Just now I mentioned about the liver. How can the liver be considered as an excretory organ also? Liver has got multiple functions in our body. But how can liver come in the concept of excretory organ? Because it is playing a major role of breakdown of amino acids to urea. Since it is doing this function, since it is carrying out this function, it is considered as an excretory organ also. There's one more point that already you had studied with reference to digestion. In the liver, one very important function related to digestion also you had studied. In the liver, the breakdown of the hemoglobin takes place, resulting in the formation of what? Hemoglobin breaks down in the liver to form what? To form? Right? We had mentioned that. What is the composition of the bile juice? Do you remember? Bile pigments. नहीं, bile pigments. Bile pigments जो है, now that since I am talking about the excretory concept, with reference to the excretory concept, again here we'll have to remember that why, right? 2 points. Why liver can be considered as an excretory organ. Then which are the concepts to write? Number 1, liver can be considered as an excretory organ because it is helping in the production of the urea, which is very toxic in our body. And second is, it breaks down the hemoglobin. It helps in the breaking down of hemoglobin. Where is hemoglobin present? You already know now in the RBCs, breaking down of hemoglobin to the 2 different type of bile pigments. So these are the 2 reasons why liver can be dragged in this concept of excretion. But yes, the vital organ remains this. We are going to study in detail about this, but these are small concepts that you have to know. You'll be asked few questions. Number 3. Can you tell me another excretory organ in our body? Additional excretory organ playing a side role, something like that. This is the lead role. Can you tell me one more? No, you have studied that. That's why I'm asking you. Not aorta. Where aorta is excretory role? Aorta we've got reference you are saying. How can you say aorta has excretory role? Excretory organ should be what? Should be throwing out some substances from the body. Should be producing some. What is it? Rectum throws out waste substances from the body by the way of the intestine. Remember, that is not excretion. That is called egestion. So excretion का जो basic concept है, now that you have to remember, releasing out of waste substances, though in the lower standards, earlier standards you have come across, and that is also excretion. But now that you are in the higher standard, that is actually not excretion. Usko egestion. We have named it also as egestion. So usko egestion bolenge. That is not excretion. Excretion is always in the form of gaseous substances by the way of lungs. Lungs we have studied. Respiration, lungs. So now if I talk about the liver, yes, it has got excretory role. What is the other one? Lungs. It has got excretory role. Give reason, justify. Lungs has got excretory role. What to write? Because lungs can also release carbon dioxide. It can release carbon dioxide by the process of diffusion. And lastly, to talk about is the skin. Can you tell me how the skin can also be dragged in this concept of excretion? Sweat. The skin pores, the skin has got glands which helps in filtration of the blood. So the skin has got sweat glands. And what are these sweat glands doing? The sweat glands are constantly helping in the filtration of the blood. And now that they are filtering the blood, now next one, they are producing the sweat. And the sweat has got small amount of urea always. The sweat has got traces of urea. Okay. So what are some additional excretory organ to liver? The concept of liver little bit to remember, the concept of the skin little bit to remember, the concept of the lungs to remember. Lungs you have studied in detail, you should always remember. Liver also little bit you have studied, but this function is new for you. This part you know, and the skin, the concept of the skin to understand. Now, the location of the excretory organs, the structure of the kidney. Now, let us try understanding the excretory system and its function. Where is this excretory system present? I already mentioned the position of the excretory system. It is present above the hips, on the dorsal side of our body, and on the dorsal side of our body, on either side of the vertebral column. So when we are talking about the concept of the excretory system, let us see what are the associated parts here. What are the associated parts and what are you supposed to understand? The process would be bit one minute. Look into the diagram that you have in your text. You have to mark that diagram. Let us talk about the excretory system. This is the excretory system that we have in our body, the location just now I mentioned. A pair of bean-shaped structures. Now these pair of bean-shaped structures, these are known as the kidneys. From the kidneys, fine narrow tube-like structures emerge out, all made up of smooth muscles. So this tube-like structures emerges out from the concave side. Now this is known as the concave side. So comes out from the inner side or the concave side of the, in physics you have studied, no? Concave, convex, so that concept you know. So from this side, the small narrow tubes made up of smooth muscles would come out and they go down towards the lower regions of the abdomen and come and meet a muscular sac-like structure again made up of smooth muscles. And this muscular sac-like structure, what is this muscular sac-like structure known as? Urinary bladder. The urinary bladder again has got a narrow tube-like structure, and this narrow tube-like structure would be known as the urethra. So a little bit more detail. So when we are talking about the kidneys, a pair of bean-shaped structures, it is always known as. And this bean-shaped structure, see here, the narrow tube-like structure. What are these tube-like structures known as? Ureter. Get acquainted with the words. Kidneys, a pair of kidneys. From the kidneys, narrow tube-like structures emerging out and moving down towards the abdomen to meet or to enter into a muscular bag-like structure. And what is this muscular bag-like structure known as? The urinary bladder. The urinary bladder will again have a narrow, short, tube-like structure known as the urethra, which opens to the outside of the body. So these are the four main parts. Which are the four main parts I talked about? A pair of kidneys, a pair of ureter, a single urinary bladder, a single urethra. After that, we are talking about the function of the kidney as what? What is the most important function of the kidney? Filtration of the blood. So definitely we have to understand which are the blood vessels which enter the heart, go out of the kidneys. So I start with the relation of the heart. Just now we were talking about the heart. So now, what is that artery which carries oxygenated blood from the heart? Sure.
Carries
Oxygenated blood.
pulmonary vein.
Are you sure? Are you sure?
Pulmonary artery.
What is my question? Which is that vessel? Pulmonary artery only. What is my question? Which is that blood vessel which carries
pulmonary vein,
oxygenated blood
pulmonary vein, and they carry oxygenated blood except pulmonary artery. Pulmonary artery नहीं carry, pulmonary vein carry. Pulmonary vein.
You already said it, na? Pulmonary.
मेरा क्वेश्चन क्या है?
Which blood vessel carry oxygenated
Which blood vessel
carry oxygenated blood?
away from the heart? कौन सा?
Pulmonary artery.
हाँ? Just अभी हमने ये पढ़ा for the last 3 days I'm teaching you this topic. Basic चीज में confusion है तुम लोगों को. Basic चीज में तुम लोगों को confusion है. Which is the blood vessel which is carrying the blood, oxygenated blood away from the heart? Pulmonary artery कहाँ से कहाँ blood ले जाता है?
Lungs. Right.
Tell me, pulmonary artery कहाँ से कहाँ? I told you no, go through the part of the confusion है पूछो. I waited 10 minutes, 15 minutes में रुकी. Before I start, मेरा तो कहानी खत्म होने वाला है. You all are not clear. Listen to my question. Name the blood vessel which carries oxygenated blood away from the heart. क्या लिखोगे? तो
हम बोलते हैं अभी
कहाँ बोला? You all are confused with pulmonary artery, pulmonary vein, pulmonary artery, pulmonary. You never said that. कहाँ बोला? Did you say that? No. What did you say?
aorta.
Aorta is the correct answer.
I first thought you said from the
What was the job of pulmonary artery? Carrying blood where to where?
heart to
Pulmonary artery carrying blood where to where? Pulmonary artery is carrying blood where to where? Heart to lungs. And pulmonary vein is carrying blood where to where?
lungs to heart.
Heart. So मेरा question का satisfy हुआ answer? What was my question? Which is the vessel which carry oxygenated blood away from the heart? Oxygenated blood away from the heart. मतलब aorta. Pulmonary artery तो oxygenated blood लेके नहीं जा रहा है. And pulmonary vein तो heart में आ रहा है. So my question was not satisfied, no. Okay, now I talk about the aorta again. What is the relation that we are talking about the aorta? वही concept है that the aorta will carry oxygenated blood away from the heart. Which vessel से aorta arise हो रहा है? Left ventricle, no, the left side of the heart. So the left side of the heart already we had studied. Left side of the heart carries oxygenated blood. So now that I say the aorta, from where is it coming? From where is it carrying blood, the aorta? From the left ventricle, oxygenated blood. And this aorta, when it reaches, I told you, aorta divides into hundreds of arteries, giving blood to so many different organs. So ये एक example है that we are studying, giving blood to the kidneys. आया समझ में the relation? So I'm saying the aorta which is arising from the left ventricle carrying the oxygenated blood, aorta will always divide. This is the biggest, largest artery of the body, and this will divide into large number of arteries. Some giving blood to the stomach, some giving blood to the bone, some giving blood to the kidneys and the liver and this. So kidneys also one such organ which will get the oxygenated blood by the way of the aorta. But जैसे the aorta is emerging out from the heart, it divides into a large number of arteries. तो वैसे तो किडनी के आसपास aorta नहीं दिखता है, but this is only for the ease of understanding. समझ में आने के लिए, relation समझ में आने के लिए aorta is marked here. Always remember, aorta is only near the heart. जैसे ही वो heart से निकला, in the chest cavity only it starts breaking up into a large number of arteries जो different organs तक जाएगा. So this aorta, I understand, ये जो aorta है, definitely it will break up into large number of vessels, tubes to reach the kidneys also. So this vessel which is a branch of the aorta and carrying blood to the kidney. What is this vessel known as? Renal artery. Okay. Now this relation, first of all, you will have to remember, because the entire concept is about filtration of the blood. Let us first try to understand ये blood vessels के relation क्या है. Again, I talk about the heart. This is the heart, and from this heart, the first vessel that will emerge out is the aorta. What type of blood is the aorta carrying? Aorta carrying oxygenated blood. This aorta will divide into a large number of arteries. Now I am talking about one such artery known as the renal artery. What is this renal artery? The renal artery is one branch of the aorta going towards kidneys. So this renal artery, now that we understand, the renal artery will enter which organ? The renal artery is entering into the kidneys. From the kidneys, now what? The vessel that comes out will be known as the renal vein. Clear? From the arteries, here I am talking about the renal artery moving towards the kidneys, carrying blood to the kidneys. And from the kidneys, the vessels which come out will be known as renal vein. I'll show you in this figure. The renal vein. What is this word? Renal, always for the kidneys. What was that word every time we were using for the lungs? Pulmonary. Vessels of the lungs, क्या बोलेंगे? Pulmonary artery, pulmonary vein. Now referring to the kidneys, क्या बोलेंगे? Renal artery, renal vein. Okay. Few more terms will come one after the other, but first step by step understand. The first concept is this: how does the blood flow to the kidney? We are talking about filtration of blood. The blood flows to the kidney by this route, by this pathway. Aorta, then renal artery, then go to the kidneys. From the kidneys come down to the renal vein, the blue tubes will come across. Renal vein. From the renal vein, can you tell me where should it go? The renal vein should go and join a big broad tube. क्या होगा उस that tube? Name of the tube will be what? It's a vein. Veins of the body go and join with the vena cava, the big vena cava there. So this should be the vena cava from the lower body or the upper body? Vena cava from the lower body. So now this goes and joins with the vena cava from the lower body. And the vena cava from the lower body gives blood to which chamber now? Vena cava gives blood to which chamber? Huh? Right? Atrium. Vena cava always gives blood to the right atrium. So again back to the heart. ये relation आया समझ में कि नहीं? पहले ये बोलो. ये relation आया समझ में? Heart will always give rise to the aorta, the large artery. That artery will always divide into hundreds of branches. So right now, since we are studying kidneys, we are only talking about the branch of the aorta, which will carry blood to the kidney. So what is the name of that branch? Renal artery. What type of blood is renal artery carrying? अगर renal artery aorta का branch है, तो what type of blood is renal artery carrying? Oxygenated. So this oxygenated blood is going to the kidneys. From the kidney, the renal vein is coming out. What type of blood is the renal vein carrying? Deoxygenated. यहाँ पे कोई exception नहीं है, like the pulmonary artery, pulmonary vein. इसमें the same concept of oxygenated, deoxygenated. Then by the way of the renal vein will go and join with other veins of the body. फिर vena cava बनेगा, then the vena cava back to the heart. अब यहाँ पे जो question mark ये है, this you should have asked me, that now that we are talking about the pure blood, good blood going to the kidney and the bad blood coming out again, oxygenated going to the kidney and the deoxygenated coming again, if the Pure blood is already going to the kidney, तो filtration किस बात का? Pure blood is going to the kidney. इसमें oxygen पूरा भर के है. So much of oxygen. So are we talking about any oxygen and carbon dioxide का story यहाँ पे? No, we are talking about nitrogenous waste. So though this blood has got so much of oxygen, but इसमें problem क्या है? इसमें यूरिया भी तो बहुत सारा है. So now we are talking about the filtration of this. Clear है? So though the blood, you get one question here, the blood that is carried by the renal artery is oxygenated. What is the need for purification? But in the kidney, are we talking about purification of oxygen, carbon dioxide? No, we are talking about purification of nitrogenous waste, urea purified. So never mind, the blood, all of you will write this relation, ye likho. This should be there in your notebook to refer. So now that I talk about that the blood that is there in the renal artery, the blood of the renal artery is very, very rich in oxygen, oxygenated air. But purification, oxygen, carbon dioxide concept we are not studying now. Here we are studying, though the blood is oxygenated, it has got large amount of urea, so that urea has to be filtered. That urea has to be filtered. So first you take down this concept, this should be known, then we read the diagram again. Okay, now see the diagram again. Where are all these vessels? See here. So the red vessel, what you get to see is what? What is this red vessel? The aorta. The aorta branches to see this fine. Can you see these fine vessels? The branches of the aorta. What are these branches of the aorta known as? The branches of the aorta will be known as the renal artery. The branches of the aorta will be known as the renal artery. Okay, so this branches of the, see here, if this is the aorta is branching, and these red tubes which are entering the kidney, so the direction of the arrow is what? The blood goes this way. The blood is entering the kidneys. So now these red tubes that you come across from the aorta, the tubes which emerge out going to the kidneys, entering the kidneys, that is what is known as the renal artery. The blood is entering here. Filtration is happening here. Now that the filtration happening here, the blood will come out also from the kidney. By which vessels? These are the renal veins. These renal veins, now here only for, again, for ease of understanding, एक tube ही दिखाया हुआ है, but actually क्या? Original, ऐसे if I look into the structure inside our body, is it only one tube? बहुत सारे tubes है. So understanding के लिए ऐसा diagrams we always draw, but there are so many renal arteries, there are so many renal veins. So which is the vessel which will carry the blood from the kidneys? The renal vein. And the renal vein will go and join which tube? It will unite and go and join with that big tube. What is this big tube known as? The vena cava. Clear? So what is the direction of the blood flow? Aorta, renal artery, kidney, renal vein, vena cava, heart. So heart से blood आ रहा है, kidney में जाएगा, and then after purification again back to the heart. So this purification is dealing with only nitrogenous waste substances. So this diagram, now look into the diagram in your textbook. Look into the diagram in your textbook. Check if it is understood. Look into the diagram of your textbook. Check if it is understood. Textbook का diagram देखो. Excretory system. That also we'll have to draw. The next class we are going to draw. Now, what is that clear? The diagram, textbook का diagram clear है? Now, what is present inside the kidneys? Where is the filtration happening? Inside the kidneys, if you try to see a detailed structure of the kidney, if you try to look into a detailed structure of the kidney, the section of the kidney shows that it has got two major parts. When we look into the section of the kidney, it shows that this particular kidney that we are talking about, this kidney has two major sections. This entire, the urea, the ureter will be there. And now that we are talking about the section of the kidney, it shows two major specific regions are there. So this outer region of the kidney that we are talking about appears little bit granular. And what is this outer region of the kidney known as? The outer region of the kidney is known as the cortex. And the inner region of the kidney appears little bit lighter. What is this inner region of the kidney known as? This is known as the medulla. Now for this you don't have any diagram in your textbook, but the section का diagram नहीं है. Textbook में section का diagram नहीं है, but the terms you have to learn. You have the terms. So what are the two major parts of the kidney? The two major parts of the kidney are the cortex and the medulla. Cortex and the medulla and the rest of the parts we are not studying.
What was that yellow part?
This is another endocrine gland. On the top of the kidney, there's an endocrine gland. This is adrenal gland. Adrenal. We will study in another chapter. What is it? Adrenaline. क्या है वो? पता है क्या है वो?
Blood fight and flight वाला chemical which suddenly.
So when you start fighting with your friends, वो adrenaline rush होता है. So we'll study later. Chemical coordination में वो बाद में पढ़ेंगे. Now look into this. The section of the kidney, when we look into the section of the kidney, what happens? This is the section of the kidney that I am talking about. Majorly, the outer region of the kidney appears darker than the inner region. What is the outer region known as? Cortex. The inner region known as medulla. Now, not going into so much of details of the inner parts, जो तुम्हारे syllabus में नहीं है, straight away we will enter into this concept. This is what is there. You have to study in detail. Then what is there in the cortex and the medulla where the filtration is happening? In the cortex and the medulla, there are some structures like this, some head-like structures. I just now mentioned cortex में, when we magnify and see this structure, it appears as if पूरा cortex में some dotted या granular structures भरा है. तो जब magnify किया, how does it look? As if there's a head-like structure, फिर एक long tubular structure है, going down till the medulla and again coming up and winding up this way. तो इस तरह का जो एक structure present in the kidney in millions. तो ये जो पूरा structure है present in the kidney in millions, this is what is responsible for the filtration of the blood. What is the name of this structure? The name of this structure is nephron. What is the definition? Nephron का definition क्या है? Nephron is the structural and the functional unit of the kidneys. Just like you have defined the structural functional unit of the lungs. क्या था? अरे हर बात के लिए तुम लोग पीछे जाओगे ऐसे कैसे होगा? You have to read no. पढ़ो, पढ़ना start करो. All of you start reading. वो क्या? Structural unit. Alveoli. Structural and functional unit of the lungs. What is it? Alveoli. Okay, alveolus. So ये जो nephron है, this is how the structure looks like. Okay, this is how the structure looks like. देखो, this is the nephron that I am talking about. I just now said basic structure to draw. Simpler, एक head-like structure है, and then followed by a very long tubular structure. So these are the two major parts. इसको बोलेंगे tubular structure, and there's a name for this particular structure. known as the renal corpuscle. So that in simple first I had drawn that type of a structure. Nephrons, two major part of nephrons. And what are nephrons? The structural functional unit of the kidneys. We will write this definition in your notebook, right? Put the head excretion. We have started with the fourth part of the chapter and write on the first question, define nephrons. Define nephrons. And I think all of you must have written down this flow chart, the small flow chart to understand blood supply. Define nephrons. Check the spelling. Nephrons. What is the definition of nephrons to write? The structural and functional unit of the kidneys. देखो. Structural and functional unit of the nephrons. Okay? Dika?
Structural and functional unit of nephrons.
Kidney. Did I say nephrons?
Yes.
Structural and functional unit of kidneys. Okay. So now, when we are talking about the parts of a nephron, let us try understanding. What are the parts of a nephron? Parts of a nephron. Look into this entire structure, the entire part. The next day we draw the diagram. The entire part of the nephron. What are the parts? Talking about the basic structure of the nephron. How should it look like? Every single nephron has a cup-shaped structure like this. Every single nephron will have a cup-shaped structure like this, and then followed by an extensively long tubular structure. And this extensively long tubular structure will emerge and then come out and end up this way. So now that we are talking about this cup-shaped, this is the basic structure of a nephron. A cup-shaped structure, double-walled cup-shaped structure. What is this double-walled cup-shaped structure known as? Bowman's capsule. This entire region is known as the tubular part of the nephron. And now talking about what is here inside, the most important part of the nephron, जहाँ पे filtration of the blood हो रहा है, glomerulus. तो glomerulus कैसे बनेगा? Glomerulus is formed by a network of capillaries here. A network of capillaries will be formed here. And what are these network of capillaries known as? This is known as glomerulus. So what are the parts of a nephron? Name the parts of a nephron. What are the parts of a nephron? Write down the parts of a nephron. First of all, get acquainted with all these correct spellings. What are the parts of a nephron? Parts of a nephron, number one, Bowman's capsule and glomerulus and tubular part of the nephron. Bowman's capsule, glomerulus and tubular part of the nephron. These are the three major parts. Glomerulus, B-O-W, spellings correct लिखो, पहले से ही from the right, from the beginning, make it a point that the spellings you write is correct. हाँ? Hybrid मत बनाना terms. Glomerulus
And glomerulus.
Bowman's glomerulus
And
glomerulus बोलो glomerulus इसी तो है word क्या difficult है glomerular नहीं glomerulus glomerulus है Bowman's capsule है Bowman's capsule and this has got tubular part के तीन नाम है that I will introduce when I start explaining the process.
There are only two parts, right?
कौन से two parts?
Bowman's capsule and
Bowman's capsule and glomerulus. अभी फिलहाल तुम लिखो ये three words. ये glomerulus and Bowman's capsule together forms known as the Malpighian body. This is known as Malpighian body. You write this way. What are the parts of the nephron? You have to write this way. Glomerulus and glomerulus, Bowman's capsule and tubular part of the nephron. These two, glomerulus and Bowman's capsule, forms the Malpighian body. Write down this word correctly. This is known as Malpighian. M-A-L-P-I-G-H-A-I-I-A-N. G-H-I-A-N.
How many parts of nephrons do we have? Like Bowman's capsule, glomerulus, tubular part of
और
nephron and
ये तीनों तुम्हें अभी सीखना ही है. Later you should write this way: glomerulus and Bowman's capsule forming the Malpighian body and tubular part of the nephron. आया समझ में? This two forms the head-like structure and this is the tubular part. Okay. So you get questions. What are the parts of the excretory system? What are the parts of the nephron? So what are the parts of the nephron? Glomerulus and Bowman's capsule together form a Malpighian body and the tubular part. The parts of the tubular part की जो तीन नाम है, I'm not giving you now. पहले एक-एक करके register करो. ये तो सब ठीक नहीं बनेगा. So now that we are talking about one this word. So what is the relation between the renal artery and renal vein? I told you. Renal artery and renal vein का क्या function बताया था मैंने अभी? Nephron. What happened? हाँ? घंटी बजी.
ज़्यादा ही बजी.
क्योंकि तुम लोग भी खुश होना इधर जाके. So now that when we are talking about the renal artery is supplying blood to the nephron. From the nephron, renal vein coming and joining with the vena. We learn again more about it.
इधर से पैर टायर में डाल के बैठेगा
और फिर अटक गया तो मैं गाड़ी में बोलते गाड़ी है मेरी हमारी गाड़ी बोलते रुक जा उधर जल्दी
उसका फोन आया था मतलब मैं क्या करूं दूसरे वाले ने हर जगह गाड़ी लेके लेके रखा है एक बात भाई आज मैं उसको सड़क पर लेके जाऊंगा हाँ बोली तो